Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 7 of the Future Ready Librarians podcast series, Leading from the Library. This is a podcast for all librarians wherever you are in your journey. It is filled with amazing guests, important topics, and engaging conversations that will inspire, engage, and support all of us as future ready librarians. I am your host, Shannon McClintock Miller. I am the district teacher librarian at Van Meter Community School in Van Meter, Iowa, and serve as the Future Ready Librarians Leader. I have the pleasure of working within my library and school community and also with others around the country and world through Future Ready Librarian events, conferences, consulting, writing, and more. I am honored to bring these voices and the work of others to our podcast and to all of you. Well, today I am so excited to welcome a new guest and a new face on to our podcast. And today I was just telling Anthony that I had my first day of school. And so a lot of exciting things happening. And a lot of the focus when I was at school today was not only thinking about our makerspace and STEM and STEAM, but listening also in our library to my colleague Megan, who teaches STEM. And so I was really excited to come home from school today and to be able to talk to Anthony just more about what he does, what he does in his library, and a lot of other things that he works on too. And so welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's so great. And I think we'll just start by having you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to the library.
All right. Well, my name is Anthony Grisillo. I teach in southeastern Pennsylvania in a small school district called Rotary Media School District. I wasn't always going to be a teacher. I was a pharmacy major when I first started out. And after 2 years of pharmacy, I realized I loved the science. I didn't really like the job prospects. So I went to community college for a year and had some incredible introduction to education courses and realized I think this is where I was supposed to be. So I started at Westchester University as a secondary biology major. I was going to teach biology to high school students. And I had an amazing professor there. She said, Anthony, you should be an elementary school teacher. And I went, you're crazy. I don't want to work with little kids. And she kept on pushing me, and she saw something, and I ended up in the elementary department, and I loved it. I taught gifted support for 16 years, and in my 16th year, I was nominated for the Pennsylvania Teacher of the Year, and I, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know how people would like to say it, I was named Pennsylvania Teacher of the Year. I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it's not all, sundaes and cherries and whipped cream. Like, there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of people's attitude changes towards you a little bit, which is weird, but I also met some incredible people and other people who get what I'm thinking half the time, which was a wonderful part about that. But the reason I bring that up is that was the catalyst that got me to be moved into the library. And I'd always loved the library because I've always felt and I know a lot of people say this, right? The library is the heart or the soul. I think it's the brains and everything of the building. Okay. I get that, the classrooms are important, but if you have a really strong library and kids realize that that is a place to go learn anything that they're interested in, the library can be such a powerful tool for all the kids. And I feel like in the age of, Google it. It's even more important to get the kids to learn their critical thinking skills in a place like the library when we're in school. So that's how I found my way to the library. And, I've loved every minute of it.
Oh, they're so lucky to have you. I mean, that's the neat thing. When I meet librarians and you can come into a space and just feel like, that energy of the why you're there. And I think oftentimes librarians, when administrators talk to me and they ask me about like hiring people, I'm like, hire your best teachers, like hire your people who love learning and love collaborating with the kids and working with them, because those are the ones I think that are really gonna do an amazing job and light up that space. I love how you said the library is the brains of the school. That's pretty cool. I love that.
I can't remember I first heard this, but I often refer to my library as the Libratory because I want people coming in here and experimenting and coming in with a thought and following up on that thought by using resources here in the library. I'll be honest with you, when I first came in here and started teaching, I tried to teach like I saw other librarians teaching. And after 16 years in gifted support, I quickly realized after my first year of trying to do things differently, I went, what am I doing? I'm just going to go back to teaching the way I taught the gifted program, but I'm going to use it with everyone. And I'm going to have the coolest classroom in the school because I have a full library at my disposal. There's no better place to teach.
Yeah. And I love that too, because I often feel like we have the opportunity in libraries to do things like if the kids come for gifted and talented, or they have an after school program or something, that's really awesome. We get to do those great things with our kids in our library or with our teachers in the classrooms. And I think that's what makes, our job so rewarding and fun too. And one thing that the reason too that I love following you and the work, and I wanted to have you on the show, was I think that it's always so interesting when librarians not only have like a maker space or do some STEM activities, but that is, I think, probably what your library is about, right? Like having them be, just like you said, the Libratory, and have them exploring. And even your Twitter name, what is it, like Space Teach, I think?
At Space Teach, yes.
Yes. And so that if kids know that, they probably absolutely love coming to see you. And I would love just for you to tell us about, when you say you use STEM and STEAM in the library, what does that mean to your kids when they come?
Well, so the biggest thing I try to get the kids to understand in the libraries, I let them know, first off, we're not a shushing library. I've had people sub for me and the kids are like, they kept on shushing us. So I have to write in my plans, there's no shushing in my library. I want the kids to know that they can come in here and have that synergy, that energy to be excited about learning, right? Because I do tell everyone that I really believe our jobs as teachers is to ignite the flames of curiosity in our students and keep on fanning those flames. And the library is a great place to do that. The STEM aspect of it is definitely, I want them to realize that you can come up with any question, right? And use the library to find the answer to that. So I started to try to introduce problems to them and provide materials, but not all the materials, that they could use books in the library to go find to solve problems to solve the problem I'm giving them. So, for example, in first grade, and you probably have heard one like this before because a lot of people have been doing it lately, they have to build an invention to keep Humpty Dumpty on the wall. So it's not about protecting the egg from when they fall, right? Like that's a middle school activity, creating some sort of protective case or a parachute or something like that. I don't want the Humpty Dumpty to fall at all. All right. And what's cool about it is I can introduce the whole activity by first just showing them some fiction books about Humpty Dumpty, but also talking to them about the origin of Humpty Dumpty, right? Like I know historians, a lot of people believe it was a canon, right? Like that's where the original story of that came from. But then also that Lewis Carroll made the Humpty Dumpty we're all used to like more famous, right? And I love to introduce to them that classic literature real quick, right? To show them that, because a lot of kids know Alice in Wonderland, but they've never gotten the book to read. And it's when you read it as a kid, you're like, wow, this is different than Disney. Oh yeah. But I like them to realize that that's okay, because then I introduce them to After the Fall by Dan Santat. And I think that is all Dan, right? I can't remember if there's somebody else who does it with him, but I love that book. It's such a beautiful take on that story, right? So I show them multiple stories of this, and then they have to go and see a bunch of materials and start to do the trial and error, do that engineering process is a term that we use for that, right? Where they make a plan, they test their plan, they change their plan, they try to improve it, and then we have the big final day where we test to see how many succeed. And I tell them, I don't care if you succeed. The only way to fail at this is to not try. And I start that in first grade. So that way they realize that failure is okay. And we learn from our mistakes. In fact, we learn more from our mistakes than succeeding. I tell them all the time, if you get 100% on a test, what did we learn? Nothing. But if you get something wrong, I know you need help with something. Like, so I really try to keep on reiterating that. So that way in the classroom, they take that kind of attitude back and they keep on doing that. And then this rolls into each grade, they have a different type of project, right? So in second grade, we do houses for the Three Little Pigs. And talk about one that you can introduce so many different versions of that story, right? I think the favorite right now of all the kids is the Big Bad Pig and the Three Little Wolves, or the Three Little Wolves and the Big Bad Pig. It's such a great take on that story. And then I know that I'm going to forget his name right now. It'll pop into my head later on. But it's not the Three Little Pigs. Josh Funk's version of it. And they're fun too. They're such great books. I love introducing again all the different stories. But now this one in second grade, I introduce a real strong math aspect. They have to keep a budget. They have to buy all the materials, not for real. Obviously, it's like a credit card. And they have limited things that they can use. But then they build the house, has to fit the pigs, keep the wolf out, and withstand huffing and puffing. And they learned this year is they never ask, what are we going to use for the huffing and puffing? So when I pull out this industrial size fan, they're like, whoa, wait, that's not fair. And I'm like, but you should have asked that question. And then, every year after that, I introduce new ones. So we've done beanstalks for Jack and the Beanstalk. We've done maglev cars. We've done this last year, fourth and fifth grade. Fourth grade did miniature golf courses, but it has to be tied into a theme of some book or something in the library, just to have that literature piece to it. And then in fifth grade this year, I did something new. I used to do Kane's Arcade, the cardboard arcade games, which is awesome. But when you have over 600 students in your school, you start to run out of space of storing these things. So when we did the miniature golf courses, I started doing them in pizza boxes. So we could close them up and stack them somewhere and they get out of the way. And I don't use used ones. I buy fresh ones from Amazon. Amazon has been the great equalizer for access to anything you need, right? For fifth grade this year, we had a shoebox symposium. And what they had to do is I told them they could be anything because they've done these activities for the last 4 years. Create some sort of interactive thematic thing that fits in a shoebox that people could do. And we had everything from skee ball to one student created a maze that you stuck a marble in, but you couldn't see the maze and you had to rotate the shoebox to make it pop out the other side. We had pool tables. We had a fortune teller. We had claw machines. We just all kinds of incredible things. And just to have them answer questions. And my favorite moments are when the kid goes, do we have a book that could show me how to do this? Yeah. Well, get out your iPad. Let's search. And now they're using the library and learning how to use the call number, right? How to search for something and go find the book to solve that problem. And I didn't have to teach it. I didn't have to, I tell the other librarians, like, I don't ever talk about Dewey Decimal System. Like I say, there's a system. And I said, guys, I can tell you what the numbers mean because I put the books away all the time. But you do not need to know that 811 is poetry. You just don't. Especially because you're going to get to college and you're going to lose Library Congress number system. So it all goes out the window anyway. But you do need to know that there's a system and that you can figure out that system. And I'd rather them figure out that system in an authentic way because they'll never forget it. I tell my students at Westchester University, where I'm the adjunct, Carl Sagan has a great quote, when you make the finding yourself, you'll never forget it. And that's how I try to teach in here all the time. I just try to set up these STEM activities and experiences that give the students a chance to find what they need to be supported. Now, For a year or two before pandemic, we started getting into the 3D printing and manufacturing and stuff like that, which I think is a huge piece that I need to get back in there. So this year I'm trying that again. That's why when I saw you at ISTE, that was what I was doing. Anybody who was talking about how do you do 3D printing with an iPad? Because we don't have computers anymore. We only have tablets. All right, well, I need to figure out how to do this because I want to empower them to be able to do that. And I love the student that goes, well, I have a laser engraver at home. Can I use this? Yes, absolutely. Oh, I have an uncle who has a mold press. Can we? Yes. But I said, you got to go talk to them about how they do it. Don't just have them do it for you. Interact with them. So, because, let's face it, it's different from when we were kids. I tell them all the time, our audience was our family at home, the teacher, and the kids in the classroom. Our students now, the audience is the world. They can put anything they want out there for anyone to see. And they need to realize that that's how they can learn as well. But I really, really push that critical thinking piece. I tell them, when you find that resource in the library, I do want you to go find a web resource to support it, and vice versa. When you have that web resources, go find a book to support it, because you still have to be a critical thinker when you're reading this stuff, because anybody can make a book nowadays and anyone can make a website. So I want you thinking all the time about where your source is from.
That's awesome. It's so real life, everything that you're doing, because that's what they would do in a job, or if they had a hobby or a passion. And I think that that's the neat thing too about teaching this way, not only in the library, but in your classroom or whatever you're teaching. I think that true authentic is just, they're so lucky that you're there to advocate for that. I know another thing that you use is gamification, and that's a huge thing, that we talk about. Like, I'm a huge fan of Breakout EDU and what Adam's done with the boxes and digital. And today, actually, my game they made a digital breakout of Sonia's Digital World, my new book that I did with Capstone and ISTE. And I'm so excited to share that with the kids. But the great thing about that is, like, the kids get so excited. It doesn't matter if they're making their own board games or digital breakout, or you're playing a game when, it's learning on GimKit or something. But when you said that was something that you use, I can't wait to hear more about that too.
Well, like you said, like Breakout EDU is just phenomenal. I remember the first time I actually did an Escape the Room, and Escape the Room is fascinating to me because I don't know how many people talk about this, but Escape the Room is the first time that I know of that it's real life imitating a video game. All right, because like Escape the Rooms were like games on tablets and on computers first, right? You found yourself. Zork was the first one I can think of, right? This was a game all text based back in the I believe the late 80s, that you find yourself standing there. What are you going to do? And you have to figure your way through this by just problem solving and trying stuff. And that's what these games got better and better as the graphics got better and the interactions got better. And then all of a sudden somebody went, you know what? Wouldn't that be cool if we did that for real? We locked somebody in a room, you had to find the clues. And I was like, yeah, that's brilliant. And we did that. I'm like, this is crazy. And then for that to be turned into a teaching tool was just brilliant. I was like, just absolutely incredible. And the way that different people think about it. I remember the first one when I came in the library, we did those right away. Like we were doing things, not to mention, I had a parent give me Chris Grabenstein's book, Escape from Limoncello's Library. And I remember reading that going, that is what my library is going to be. And to this day, not all my students know this, I have stuff hidden throughout the entire library. There are certain books they take out that it has a sticker in the back and it says, go up to Mr. G and say this. Don't tell anyone else, because if you tell anyone else, it invalidates it. And it means they found one of the clues. I was just telling my principal 2 years ago, I hid these aliens around the library. There were 7 of them. And I told the students, like, there's 7 things that are hidden. When you see them, you'll know, but don't tell me about it. Just feel happy that you found one. And if you say anything to me about it, I'll deny their existence. So when a student would go, I see an alien, there's no such thing as aliens. Like I would just totally ignore. And then at the end of the year, I went to find them. I couldn't find them all. I couldn't find the seventh one. So just this last year when I had to clean up to put my new ceiling in, I found the seventh one and I was so excited. I was like, there it is. I finally found it. But, like I love that stuff. And I love that feeling it gives me. So my library is set up in a gamified way that there's these hidden things that they happen upon. Well, one of the other things I did was I did create a breakout EDU for them to have to go around in 3 groups and solve all these clues. And it relied on, right, using the library the way you would use a library. Like you're searching for a certain book in this, a poetry book, right? Like, so you need to go at 811. All right, use the call number to open up this thing, that type of thing. But I also made my first, I don't even know what you call it, a book safe, whatever, where you carve out the inside of a book and you have a space and you close it. I don't recommend doing that. It is not as easy as when you see the old prison movies, I'm like, I don't know how they did this with like a blunt object, because I had the sharpest blade in the world. It took me like an hour to do this thing, and then gluing it all and then putting some felt in there to make it like really like snazzy. And I chose a dictionary. And people, why did I choose it? Because nobody uses a dictionary anymore. So nobody ever happens upon this book. So I have like 8 dictionaries. So I put it in the very bottom corner. So I don't ever worry about somebody finding it, but it's fun to do the breakout EDU now because I forced them to go find a dictionary.
Yeah.
I think the only other book that nobody uses anymore is a thesaurus, right? Because thesaurus.com has made that moot. Like I gotta go all the way over there to get that book on. Let me just do it right here,
That's funny. I love
but the gamification thing is great because again, it's a way to enable kids to critically think, solve problems, and make the discovery themselves, because there's nothing that makes me more excited than when a student is empowered to make their classmates better around them. One of the things I used to do, and I don't do it that much anymore because the pens just don't work as well as they used to, but termites are fascinating. Termites will follow the ink in a Bic pen, or at least they used to. Like the Bic ink in a Bic pen had a certain smell to it that mimicked the pheromones that they use to make their scent trails. So you could take termites and draw a circle with a pen and put them in there, and all the termites would just line up on the circle and just walk around in a circle. The past couple of years I've done it. It works pretty good, but not as good because I think they've changed their formulas for the ink and all that. But that being said, I remember the first time I did that in the library here. I had to calm my principal down to let him know termites are not going to eat up the school. That's the first thing, because he got very paranoid about that. But I put them down, and before anybody started to do anything, I had one student go, I know what these are. And I go, really? And he wasn't my gifted student. He wasn't even my average student. He was a learning support student who struggled to do a lot of things, reading definitely one of them. And I knew what kind of book this kid liked to take out of the library. He loved the insect guides. I said, go find a book, show the class what you think this is, and show them in the book the proof. And he went beeline right to my identification books, came back, opened that up, and I get goosebumps when I tell this story. I'm sorry. He was the rock star. He was a kid opening that book, showing the picture of the termite, and them all going, oh, how did you know this? He's like, well, I see them outside my house, and I love to look at the books. And how'd you know what that's? Well, because I get these books all the time. And, oh, so this is where the insect books are. Yeah. So like, cool. And I didn't teach that. This 4th grader did. And that moment too, that 4th grader, he was rock star. Like, and the kids never looked at him the same way again. He wasn't just some learning support kid who struggled reading. He was a kid who knew stuff. And for them to see him in that other light, that's what I love about gamification, because you can set up things and ask questions, and you never know who's going to be the kid that looks at that code and go, oh, I know that code. What do you mean you know that code? I've seen this code before. Or how do you know that's a Caesar's box? Because I've seen this before. That's the kind of stuff that gamification lets happen. And because I'm not one of those people. I don't poo-poo video games. I'm a child of video games. I grew up in the I was born in 71, right? Like Pong and Skeet were the first things that we had at home. And then when the Atari came out, we're like, wait, we can actually have more than one game on this system. This is great. And the graphics were horrible, but we played them and we loved them. Now it's not as much as it is now, where people like get immersed in them and leave. Like I still went camping and stuff like that. And I tell the kids everything in moderation, but I'm never ever going to put down gaming, because there's plenty of research that shows that kids that problem solve in games problem solves in other parts of their lives. And I just think it's a wonderful, amazing tool.
Well, and we're so lucky now to have creative people that are creating these platforms, that bring not only gaming to the library or people who love games, but to anyone. And it's something that's really opened just a lot of great learning opportunities in our classrooms. And I love that part of it. And your stories of bringing the breakouts is awesome. Those are so fun, just so fun. Now, I know that we've been talking for a while, but I really want to know, when you told me, I always ask my guests to tell me some things they want to talk about. And Anthony wrote down my bubbles, my campfire, and my life-size finback whale. I got to know what that means.
All right. So I was very fortunate. I had this incredible mentor in my life. When I was studying to be a teacher, I had my science methods for elementary school teachers course, and it was taught by a gentleman named Sandy Maxwell. James Maxwell is his full name, James Sandy Maxwell. And he was just incredible. And I actually teach the class with him now. Like, he's one of the other professors, and now I teach it along with him. And I feel very lucky that I met him at the right time, and I did my student teaching with him. And one of the things he brought to us were these bubbles, and I believe he learned them from NASA. So essentially what it is, it's a big thing of plastic drop cloth that you tape together in a way, and you stick a fan in it, and it blows up. People think it's like a bounce house, but it's same type of idea, but you can't jump on it. It's not that kind of powerful, and it's not that kind of shape. It's just a big bubble to get inside. And the first one I made was teeny tiny, and we pretend that it was a shrinking machine. So I would have my second graders, when we were learning a unit on measurement, go in one side and come out the other, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And then I made a giant life-size scale ruler so they could see the half, the quarter, the eighth, and see what that was like to lay on it with their bodies. And then we went back up and we made ourselves large again. And then when I asked them to go around and measure with the ruler, no one made a single mistake, because they just did it like in this way that they could see that these lines meant things, right? Well, these bubbles have like morphed and changed, and I just keep on making them bigger and bigger and bigger. And the biggest one I ever made was because Sandy, he challenged me when I was student teacher to make this version of the bubble. It's a life-size finback whale. So I mean, that's one of the things that we struggle with, right? Scale is, we like to say things like, oh, this is big, this is small. Well, those terms mean absolutely nothing unless you give it something to compare again. In fact, one of my favorite stories is I'm Not Small. I think that's what it's called. I can't remember the author, but it's about these bears, and the one's going, you're small. No, I'm not small. You're big. And then in the end, a really big one comes by and a really teeny tiny comes by, and they go, oh, you're both big and small. So it's a really great idea, this idea of comparative descriptions, right? And, when you talk about a whale, it's hard for us to imagine how big these are. Like giraffes are another one of my favorite animals, because we don't realize how big they are. And if you ever get a chance to go to the zoo down in Maryland, the Baltimore Zoo is wonderful. You can stand right next to a wall and have a giraffe standing right next to you, their head above you. And if you're not careful, they'll drool on you. You see this animal, you realize, wow, they are immense. Like, I just couldn't, that scale, and to have that experience really helps you understand it, right? So I built this finback whale, and it was out of a resource here that we have in Pennsylvania called the Keystone Aquatic Resource Education. And there was a pattern in there, but from all my making of bubbles, I was able to tweak it and make it really big. And it takes up a whole gym, and the kids can stand next to it. They can go inside of it, but they leave their understanding like how big this animal is. But what's more important is the lesson of how what I do in my backyard affects that giant animal. And I talk about pollution and how everything runs downhill. And what you do in your background gets into the water system right near you and eventually gets into the creek, and the creek gets into the stream gets into the river. The Delaware River empties into the Delaware Bay, right into the Atlantic Ocean. Well, guess who lives there? Finback whale. And your pollution probably isn't going to hurt the finback whale at all. It's too big. But it will hurt all the food that the finback whale eats. And if all the food dies, the whale dies. And it makes them feel connected. I call it 6 degrees from a whale when I talk to them about this, kind of like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Because I tell them, like, you think you're not connected to things. You're connected to everything. We're all in that web, right? And what we're doing affects everything. So the whale is just one of these cool things that Sandy goaded me into doing. And I still have Percy. I still bring Percy out, and Sandy borrows Percy sometimes. And I've been lucky enough to bring it to my girls' summer camps and show it to the kids. And it's just a blast. If I had a dream, I would love to have a grant sometime and get them made of. It's made out of big sheets of plastic drop cloth and duct tape and packaging tape. Percy has been repaired hundreds of times at this point. I would love to make it out of the material that a bounce house is made out of and like ship them around whoever wants to borrow them. Because I think every kid should be able to see these because it's amazing. Well, the campfire is another thing that Sandy gave me. The campfire is literally a bunch of logs, real logs that you put around a chicken wire shaped cone with Christmas lights around it, like twinkly lights, and then cellophane. And then you set that in the middle of the room and you turn out the lights, and it makes you feel like you're sitting around a campfire. When I tell you that I do a storytelling thing, grades K through 5 every year. I don't do it for Halloween. I do it in the beginning of October when it gets cooler out because I associate that with camping. But there's some kids that are like, "Ooh, we're going to do Halloween stories." If that's what you want to think, that's okay. But we do these stories because I want to tell them all the time. Like, all these books are great, but before there were books, there were still stories. We've always had stories, and the best stories are the ones that you can tell yourself. And you never tell them the same way twice. They're even the better ones. Like, I love books from like professional storytellers. I had a good friend. Her name was Diane Yannick. She was a competitive storyteller, and she inspired me in so many ways. Unfortunately, she passed away a couple of years ago, but she was an amazing storyteller, and the way she could just draw you in. And I do that with the students because I want them to realize that if you can tell the story, your next step is writing it down on paper because you can write the story. And to realize that they all are writers because you can tell the stories. So we go around and we tell stories. And one of my favorite stories about that was I told one story so great one time, and they're never scary. They all end in a silly way. The scariest one I tell is in 5th grade, but it's not scary like rah. It's when you think about it, it's kind of like, ooh, that's kind of dark. But that being said, I would tell the story, and this kid came home and she was like, "My son won't even go into his bedroom." And I'm like, but it wasn't that scary. And I told her the story, and she's like, that's not scary. You must be a really good storyteller. Then I go, well, we do sit around a campfire in the dark at the library, and we sit there, and the kids always want to tell theirs right away. And I go, no, you need to write it down so I can preview it. So now I created this natural flow of them writing that story down. Yep. And if it's not all blood and gore, because that's what half of them want to tell. And I'm like, no, we're not terrifying anyone here. It needs to be something that's fun and it can be suspenseful. It can be, something that makes you go, but that's the story of the bubbles, the whale, and the campfire.
I love it. Such great ideas. I mean, anybody that listens to this, including me, we're gonna walk away. I have lots of notes written down to share with my teachers and my STEM teacher and just the kids too. And so you're doing amazing things. And I would love for you to tell people where they can follow you online and your work so we can keep up with all these great things that you're doing.
Well, really, the best way to do it is on Twitter @SpaceTeach. I think my Instagram is at Space Teach as well. I'll be honest with you, I'm just getting into the Twitter world. And I am hopefully going to be starting a blog soon. I have a lot of things that I write down, but my problem is I write like I think, which, I grew up in Southwest, like right outside Southwest Philly. So like I always tell everyone, I think like somebody from the burbs of Philly, and sometimes it's not coherent. I know what I'm talking about, but I have to really, so when I go to write it, it's kind of like diarrhea of my brain. I always relate it back to George Carlin. I don't know if you ever knew his Brain Droppings was one of his books. That's how I feel. Like it's just little thoughts that I might start putting out there. But when I have that, I'll tweet that out there. So, Twitter's really the biggest one that I put stuff out on all the time. And hopefully I'll do more with Instagram this year because that's one of my goals. And I want to play with TikTok a little bit because I was having some fun with that, with our tailgate. I go down all the Eagles game. I'm a rabid Philadelphia Eagles fan. And we were having some fun with that. So I'm realizing I should probably be showing some of the things that I do here in the library, just a quick video. Because, we sometimes we feel like what we're doing is like duh. Well, why wouldn't everybody do this? Then all of a sudden you realize somebody says, I've never thought to do that. Like when I put away my tools for my vacuum cleaner, I always vacuum them off with the vacuum and then I put them away. And I remember my mom going, I never thought to do that. I go, oh, well, yeah, because now it's not dirty. I just cleaned it with itself and put it. But I didn't think that was all that amazing, but like to her, that was like the coolest thing ever. So, they're the things I realize I do in here a lot, especially because I am not traditional. And I acknowledge that. I love my friends who are librarians who went through the programs who can help me be a better manager of the library, because that's where I struggle. That's not my strength. But at the same time, I like to help them realize that no, just putting out a thing of blocks does not make a makerspace. Like giving it purpose and giving them a challenge. Now it's a makerspace. Because that's something I see happen a lot. Or just because you do a cute art project along with a book, that's not makerspace or STEM. There has to be purpose. Like purpose is the most important thing. But that's all great teaching, right? Like how many times are we told, know your why and know how you're going to get there? Right? Well, that's purpose. Like we want to be purposeful. So.
Well, you've taught us so many things and we can't wait to keep following, and you definitely should start a TikTok. You would be great at it. And so
that's like on my list. So
we'll be waiting for you to do
awesome.
That. But I'm so happy that you joined us. I loved seeing you at ISTE and it's just great. And definitely, sometimes I have people guests on and I'm like, oh, I got to have them now on a webinar because you'd be awesome at that too. So we can see some of these great things that you're doing. And so we'll catch up with you then and just, keep posting so we can see all these amazing things like your whale. I can't wait to see a picture of that. So
that is the background on my Twitter. So if you go there, you'll see my goofy head, and then my banner is the whale. Like I put it there because when people see whale wrangler on my thing, like, what's that mean? Well, because I have a life-size whale. Like it's there for people to see. And listen, before we get off of this thing, I want to thank you for all you do. You inspire so many teachers and librarians and people who are just in education because you share your ideas so freely, and we appreciate that because that helps everyone be better. If the first time I heard about teachers pay teachers, I was a little standoffish. Like I would never ask somebody to pay me for these ideas. And there's so many things that you share so willingly that I know you could be like, give me some money for this. And you don't. And I appreciate that because that's huge. Now, at the same time, I've learned that some teachers become millionaires on teachers pay teachers. And I went, all right, maybe I should.
I often think that myself, but one of my favorite things to do is to share. And I think that's one of the neatest things about the community that we're in as librarians is just how we share and come together to help each other. And so I'm glad you're part of my community too.
Same here. Likewise. I tell everyone, they're all my students. It might not be in my classroom. They might not even be kids. They're all my students. Like I'm a teacher because it's my calling. It's not my job. It is a
Yeah.
profession, but I was called to do this, and I take it seriously. And everyone, it doesn't matter if they're in front of me or not, they're my kids, and I want them to do the best they can and help everybody have an incredible experience and light those fires and keep fanning them flames. That's my mantra.
You're amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. And I can't wait to talk to you more. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
As always, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for this episode of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series, Leading from the Library. And a very special thank you to our sponsors, Follett. You make a difference in our libraries, schools, and within our lives and that of our students every day. We appreciate everything you do. I hope you can take what you learned in today's podcast and put it to use within your practice as a future-ready librarian. If I can support you in any way, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram at Shannon M. Miller or to my email at shannonmcclintockmiller@gmail.com. I am always happy to help. Until next time, friends, keep finding ways to lead within and from your library.